Baker Valley, not much has changed since the pioneers did it. In some places you can still see wagon tracks, and there's a lot of different events and just different things to see, museums and displays and things all over the valley that pertain to the pioneer days, because not much of this valley has been built over to like hide that. There actually are tracks right over here on this hillside. Kind of hard to see from the road, but they're there. Anne from In Search of Wonder is doing a challenge for August called the Prairie Trail Challenge. Go and check it out. She's got different levels and different things to complete in order to participate in this challenge. It sounds like so much fun, and it's all based around pioneer times, the Oregon Trail, the Pioneer Trail. And weirdly enough, I actually ended up needing to make an emergency trip out, well, not emergency, but just an important trip out to Oregon from Arkansas. I left yesterday morning, I don't know, about 11 a.m. and I am here about an hour and a half or so from my final destination, which is my mom's house. But I am in my hometown, Baker City, and I wanted to stop off and do a little bit of footage of our pioneer stuff here, our Oregon Trail stuff here. I thought I would take the opportunity, since I happen to be in the area unexpectedly, just to show you guys one of the places that I am familiar with that would have been on the Pioneer Trail, Oregon Trail, as they came through the Blue Mountains. All this part of Eastern Oregon, you can find wagon ruts and other sort of markers. Just wanted to show you guys a little bit about what it looks like here in Baker County, Pioneer Country. Of all of the places that I have been in the world, which isn't a lot, but I have been to some really beautiful places, I do have to say that I think if I could live anywhere, I would want to come back to my hometown, my home county of Baker County, Oregon. This area was settled by pioneers in the mid to late 1800s, and very minimal modernization has happened here. I mean, the actual town, you know, we get new stores in, we get stores out, stores back in, stores back out, whatever. But a lot of the buildings, the old buildings, are still there, just fixed up for today's, you know, modern times. But when you drive out of town a little, there are lots of places where you'll still see old Victorian farm equipment and, you know, just like homes, barns. Right now I am headed up the hill a little bit to our Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. And this is just like a museum dedicated to the pioneer days and the Oregon Trail here in Baker County. I have always loved to imagine what it would have been like coming up over that hill and seeing this beautiful valley with the gorgeous mountains all around. On this side, we have the Eagle Caps, and then behind me are the Elkhorn Mountains. And then this beautiful valley that is, you know, currently farmland and a couple of little towns and one larger town. It is home for me. It is home for my husband. He was born and raised here, and I moved here when I was 13. This is where we got married. This is where we started having children. Like, this is our place. This is the Baker Valley. This is where my husband and I grew up. I could stand here and tell you about decades worth of memories, but they probably wouldn't mean a whole lot to anybody but me. Up this direction is where the pioneers came down. And there are still wagon ruts that can be seen up on the hill over here, and then they came down into the valley this way. There is a legend that there was one lone pine tree or Douglas fir type of tree out here in the middle of the valley that served as a landmark for pioneers and Native Americans. And then it was cut down in 1843 by some careless immigrant, apparently. But even Narcissa Whitman mentions the lone pine tree in her letters or diaries or something. So it apparently was some kind of important landmark for the pioneers. All right, so the place where the wagon ruts can be seen, like at the museum and all that, is just over that hill right there. They have it kind of on this like little cliff, so you can't see it from here, but it's up there. And so the path that the pioneers would have taken to actually crest that hill, right, would be throughout all of this stuff. And this part of the area is where me and friends used to come and ride dirt bikes and hunt for rabbits and race cars and get into all kinds of trouble. But these are the hills and sagebrush and everything that the pioneer people would have been coming through to get up here to come down up over this hill. And then down into the valley, like I showed you. I now live in Arkansas, where, at least in my part, sagebrush is not a thing. All these colors, all these plants, not a thing. The way that it sounds when you walk on this, the crunch that it makes under your feet, it's just one of those things, you know. You also know if you get too far out there, you are going to encounter a rattlesnake. But the way that the sagebrush smells and just the way that all of this looks, this is home for me for sure. As soon as I go around that corner, around that hill right there, those mountains will be huge and beautiful right in front of me. Hey everybody, so tonight I'm going to share with you about the Prairie Trail Reading Challenge that is put on by Anne at In Search of Wonder. I think this is going to be a super fun reading challenge, even though I am going to rant here in just a second. It's okay. It's fine. I'm really actually excited about this reading challenge. She has this really fun little game board here. And each of these little squares are worth a certain amount of points. You go around the game board without dying of dysentery or otherwise, and you win the Prairie Trail Reading Challenge. She's even incorporated different prompts. She's incorporated like a group challenge if you want to join the group challenge over on her Discord. All kinds of really fun things. Anne is kind of the queen, in my opinion, of making reading challenges because she really goes all out to make different fun options and levels and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to participate to the best of my ability. I have gone through my TBR and chosen anything that seemed related to the westward expansion, Oregon Trail, prairie life, whatever. The first prompt, and this is the the mandatory prompt in order to have said that you've participated, is to read a historical fiction novel featuring westward expansion in the US between 1780 and 1880. So those are her years there for the westward expansion. Some of this stuff I have is a little bit later. And so I went through and picked out anything on my TBR that kind of had those dates and relatively close to anything that might have to do with westward expansion. But there wasn't a lot. And the reason for that is I grew up in Eastern Oregon. I lived there for 33 years and I was just inundated with pioneer life history. Everything was themed Oregon Trail, pioneer, Old West, all of our history lessons up until middle school and high school, all of our field trips, and just, the murals around town were like Oregon Trail maps and, cowboys and Indians and all that kind of stuff. And the businesses were named after it. All the touristy items were named after it and featured this little logo for the county that I grew up in. And I mean, now that I look back, okay, I do miss it, but I just I feel like it's not a topic that I'm super interested in just because I literally could probably tell you anything you ever want to know about the Oregon Trail in Eastern Oregon. Eastern Oregon was the end of the Oregon Trail for a lot of people. A lot of people did continue on and go in further to the west, to the Willamette Valley area and along the Oregon coast, and that was a few hours west of where I grew up. But a lot of people did stop there in the valleys where I grew up, Baker County and Grand Ronde Valley, and then into Umatilla County where there is a Native American reservation, and on into southeastern Washington where there is the Whitman Mission. If you guys are interested in this, look up the Whitman Massacre. There are a couple of stories out there, like diaries and things from the Whitmans who were missionaries. And so I lived really close to that whole area. Anyway, it's just one of those things I grew up knowing a lot about. And so I haven't put a lot of those themed books on my TBR just because I'm I want to learn something else now. But I do have a few things. And I had a few things in my regular, permanent collection that I picked out. So let's just go through my piles of possibilities and we'll see what I actually end up doing. The only other thing I'm doing for August as far as reading is just, it's like a mood read. I can't remember what she called it, but Bookish Kelly made a video, I'll put it in the description box, about August being like a mood read into the summer mood read month. So other than the Prairie Trail Challenge, that is the other thing I'm just going to do mood reading. So if I'm in the mood, I will probably read a lot more of these. And if I am not in the mood, I'm at least going to finish this challenge because if you give me a challenge, I'm going to do it. The other thing is that normally in this kind of a video where I announce what I'm going to do for the next month, I talk about my children's classic reading challenge. However, the book for this month is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, and I actually just read that with my daughter, and so I'm actually not going to read that personally this month, but if you are doing that challenge, that's the book for this month. So let's get into the piles of possibilities that I'm doing for the Prairie Trail. Now, the first prompt is to read a historical fiction novel featuring westward expansion in the US between the years 1780 and 1880. I literally had one historical fiction novel on my entire TBR. Now, you guys remember both of these shelves here, it's like 10 shelves. Well, actually, I unhauled a bunch of stuff. I think I'm down to 8 shelves now of TBR. So the only thing on there that would fit this prompt is this book here. It's called Unto a Good Land by Wilhelm Moberg. It is a fictional story about Swedish immigrants. It opens in the summer of 1850. This couple from Sweden and their children land in New York, and then they end up migrating to Minnesota Territory by riverboat, steam wagon, Great Lakes steamship, and an ox cart. And there they claim 160 acres and begin farming. So it just talks all about like their first year as immigrants both to America and then also into the more Western territories. So that will be really interesting because it is not at all about the Oregon, territories. It is much further east than that, the Minnesota Territory, which I know nothing about. So this will be an interesting read. So that is like my number one option for that prompt. And that is the prompt that has to be completed if you even want to participate, right? So you have to read a historical fiction. I struggle with historical fiction if they're not like old classic, right? Which I guess makes them historical, but you know what I mean. So we're gonna do it. Well, at least we're gonna attempt it. But if we fail, I don't know why I'm talking about myself in the plural, but if I fail, or if I get bored, or if I finish it and want to read more, I've also got Caddy Woodlawn, and this is by Carol Ryrie Brink. And this book, I think I remember, Mom will have to confirm, but I think I remember my mom telling me that this was one of her favorite books as a kid. Oh yeah, it said it was first written in 1935, so definitely Mom would have read this as a teenager. It would have been a classic by her time. But it's about a girl growing up in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin frontier in the 1860s. Now, the only thing I'm concerned about is this might not be actually about the expansion, but instead about people that are already there and may not feature some kind of travel or change or newness, or you know what I mean. So I don't know that it's necessarily going to count for the prompt, but it might count for something else. But I may read that. I've never read it. But I've also got these, all right? And these, I'm gonna just say they count even if they are skinny little kid books. Not like books for skinny little kids, just books that are skinny and also for kids. So this is the Oregon Trail, like choose your own adventure set. I actually am missing a couple from this set, but when I was out in Oregon, I don't know, it was a few years ago, my mom and I went into the little town that her and I were both born in, and it's called Heppner, Oregon, and there's a little bookshop there called Flood Town Books, and it's called that because the town flooded, and that's like its claim to fame, is it had this big massive flood a really long time ago, like over 100 years ago. But anyway, went in there and I saw these and I was like, those are so cool. And so Mom's like, you have to have them. So she bought me every one that they had. And I've since found out that I am missing a few. But they are choose your own adventures, like we used to do back in the day. So, but they're based on the Oregon Trail video game, which is kind of what this challenge actually is based on as well. If you were a 80s, early 90s kid, you probably played this on like some old little clicky computer. And that's kind of what these are based on. You see that the font has that, whole thing and the pictures, and here's the guy with his ox, and they're all just kind of these little pixelated, sort of, 21st century pixelated. The books each have more than 20 possible endings, right? So if you're not familiar with this, basically what you do is you start on page 1. Look at the inside of this. That's so much fun to do. So you start on page 1, right? And you read a few pages. And then once you get a few pages in, it's going to give you options, okay? So you read like the first part of the story, right? And then it will say, if you want to ask local Oregon trail guide about potential sickness ahead, turn to page 31. If you want to split up and go on the Santa Fe Trail, turn to page 69. And so then you turn to page 69 and you read a couple more pages, and then it will give you options again, right? So after you've read a couple of options, actually on this one, if you turn to page 69, you're actually at the end of the story on page 70, so you didn't get very far. But you can keep going and read through page 94, and you'll have more options. If you stay in Salt Lake City, turn to page 29. If you keep moving ahead on the California Trail, turn to page 89. So anyway, you guys get the point, right? And so there's 20 different options. So you can just read this book like for hours and get different stories. If you can remember what you last did, you probably have to mark it. So I am definitely going to at least read one of these, but maybe if I read a few of them, it will count as one historical novel. No, yeah, probably not. Okay, I better just stick with my Swedish guy. Okay, so that was the first prompt, the dreaded dysentery. If you do that historical fiction novel, you get 30 points and you have avoided dying of dysentery, which is always nice. Then the second prompt is Mountain Pass, and that one is to read a nonfiction book about westward expansion from the same time period. Now, I only found one book in my TBR that is specifically about westward expansion. And that is this one called Four Wagons West, The Story of Seattle. And this is about the settling of Seattle, right? And so this is by Roberta Fry-Watt. And this is a story that she took from her grandfather's diaries, records of the whole wagon train party, stories told by these people that she remembered growing up. And so she puts them all together in this account. Now, I read through enough of it to get a feel that it is it's kind of like documentary style, right? Where you tell a little bit of a story, it's true, but you put it into story form, and then you tell some facts, and then you tell some story, and then you tell some facts. It looks like it's kind of like that. My mom sent this to me a year or two ago, and I think I'm gonna really like it. I love Seattle. We lived there for about 18 months, and I went there a lot as a kid. My grandpa lived there, and I love everything about Seattle. I really do. Okay. But I also have some other nonfictions in this stack. So after I get done going through the prompts, I'll just share with you guys whatever else I didn't talk about. All right, the third prompt is drought. Reread a favorite book or a backlisted book by a favorite author, any genre, any topic. Okay, so all the rest of these don't have to be related to the Prairie Trail or the westward expansion. They can just be whatever you're reading that month. It just needs to fit the prompt, and you can still play the game. So if you find that you are done with, the subject, you can move on and still participate throughout the entire month. I have chosen things for each of the prompts that have to do with the topic, just because I'm on a roll, reading that. I feel like I'm gonna want to read more. So I have chosen a couple of things here. This is A Gown of Spanish Lace by Jeanette Oke, and I haven't read this book for probably 20 years or close to it. But before that, I read it several times. I really enjoyed this story. It's a Christian fiction, and I really don't remember a lot about it other than the girl. There's a mystery regarding her mother's wedding gown, and the girl gets kidnapped. That's all I remember. So I think I might want to reread that. That would fit with this drought. Reread a favorite book. And then, if not, or also, I've got the set of When Calls the Heart books by Jeanette Oke also. And again, I have not read these in a really, really long time. Probably, really, 20 years. And so I feel like if I'm gonna read one of these, I gotta read all of them. So you got When Calls the Heart, When Comes the Spring, right? Yes, okay. When Breaks the Dawn, When Hope Springs New. Weird little side note, they all start with the word when, and the guy's name is Win. I don't know, I just always thought that was interesting. But anyway, I might read through these. If I do, that would also fulfill another prompt. Now, you can't double up on prompts, but one of the prompts, I'll just go ahead and skip to it, is Wagon Train, and that is to finish a series. So if I start the series, I've done the drought prompt, and if I finish it, I've done the wagon train prompt, and they're 2 different books, so it still counts. I might do that, we'll see. And then the next one, supply replenishment, that one is to read with a buddy. And so I'm probably just going to read with my kids. I've never done a buddy read before, and that's not to say that I won't, but this month particularly I have quite a bit going on, and so I probably won't try to commit to a buddy read with someone that's not in my household, but I am back to school with my kids, and so I do read with, especially my youngest daughter, I read with her daily. And we are actually reading the Little House series right now. We're just getting ready to start the 3rd book when we go back next week. We just finished Little House on the Prairie. So the next school day, we will start on the Banks of Plum Creek by Laura Ingalls Wilder, which also fits with this theme perfectly. So that will be my buddy read. And then the next prompt is hunting. Read a book by a new to you author. So there are new to me authors in this pile of books I'm going to share with you here in a second, like the rest of my pile of possibilities. So I'll get one there. She's got River Crossing, which is read any book. Obviously, that will apply. And then she's got Lost Trail, which is get a book recommendation and add it to your TBR. All right, so that's where you guys come in. Give me some book recommendations in the comments below. They don't have to be related to the Prairie Trail or Oregon Trail or anything like that, but if they are, that might be good for this. But give me some recommendations, and then once I add one of them to my TBR, then I can complete this one. And then the last one is Injured Oxen, Unhaul a Book. So I'm sure I will do that because I do that all the time. Every week I am unhauling books. So those are all of the prompts. Let me show you the rest of my pile of possibilities. And some of these are sort of a stretch, but again, most of the prompts on here don't have to be about the westward expansion in the first place. So I'm just kind of reading in the same theme, right? So this one is called Indian Givers by Jack Weatherford, How Native Americans Transformed the World. I got this when I went out to the Pea Ridge Military Park. It's basically where the Battle of Pea Ridge took place during the American Civil War. And we live basically on the border of Arkansas and Missouri. And that battle took place on that border because Missouri was kind of undecided on what side they wanted to be on. Arkansas was the Confederate side, but Missouri was kind of like, we don't know, whatever. And so they basically just kind of had a battle, and it ended up, that was the battle that turned Missouri for the Union side. So that's just a place we'd like to go and visit and, just tour and think about historical stuff. It's very close to where we live, just, I don't know, maybe half an hour, probably not even that. Anyway, at their bookshop, I got this in April when my mom was out here, and it basically tells about how the Native Americans transformed the way life is lived throughout the world by sharing their cultural, social, and political practices. So I think that I have absolutely no idea what that is going to look like, but I think it will be really interesting. One of the things that I do like to study concerning Native Americans are the practices that we find within their culture going back a really long time that are similar to practices that we find in other cultures around the world. Part of that is because we are all just, the same people. We're humans, and humans do similar things. But part of it is because, in my opinion, is because we all came from the same place, right? And we all were created by the same God. And at one point, we were all aware of his requirements. I think back to Babel and how everybody there, everybody was together, and then he confused them and sent them all in their different directions because of their disobedience to him. So everybody there gathered at Babel back in the day, they knew who Yahweh was and what his requirements are. And so as they went out their different ways and made new, people groups and new cultures and new ways of life or whatever, as they expanded out, I think that's, why we see Native American practices being very similar to some of the other, and a lot of Hebrew practices ancient Hebrew practices can be found within the Native American cultures. I just think that is amazing and cool, and I probably could go off on that quite a bit more because it's something I've studied a lot, but that's not what this video is about, right? Maybe we'll talk about it at Thanksgiving time. I've just always really loved learning about Native Americans, and after I read this I'll go into more stuff, but kind of grew up around some tribes in Eastern Oregon, and it's always been something that has fascinated me, just that culture and the way they did things, and the way they've kept it alive so long. I think it's pretty cool. All right, and then I have a couple of books here that my friend gave me. Both of these are just outside of the time period, but still very applicable. So this is Laura Ingalls Wilder, On the Way Home. And this is her diary of their trip from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri in 1894. So this would be her and her husband, Alonzo. I'm not sure if they had, oh yeah, they did have Rose, their daughter. She was 7, and they made this trip and settled in Mansfield, Missouri, and that is their final home as far as the parents went. Here's a picture of Laura and Alonzo there. And I have been to this home. It's a couple of hours from where I live, and toured it, and it was pretty cool. They have Pa's fiddle there, like the actual Pa and his actual fiddle is still there. And once a year they have this thing called Wilder Days during September, and everybody comes to this really small town in Mansfield, Missouri, and you have like barbecue out on the lawn of their home, and somebody gets up and plays Pa's actual fiddle, and it's such a fun, festive time. So I'm going to read that little book that my friend gave me, and then she also gave me this one, West from Home. This is letters from Laura Ingalls Wilder, or letters of her, so probably some to her and from her. And it's dated San Francisco, 1915. Anyway, there's a lot of photographs in here, and it is just about Laura's later years and her daughter Rose. She went out to San Francisco to see her daughter. This is a picture of her, of Laura Ingalls Wilder in later years. And so I think this will be fun, a fun epistolary read. Then I have this book that I got at Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is another like military park thing that you can tour here. And it is basically, it's like a book on cooking. So there's recipes, but then there's also like little essays in here. And it's like if somebody wrote you a cookbook, but then also wrote you all kinds of stories about what you're cooking, and you know, about the history of that food and all kinds of stuff. So it's the back of it is titled Cooking, Essays, and Narratives. So that will be fun. This one was put together in 1832 by Lydia Maria Child. So we're not even really into the Victorian times at that point. We're still pushing late Regency / right there at the beginning of the Victorians and the ends of the Regency. So that's a fun era too. And then I've got this one, African American Women of the Old West, which I think I also got out there at Fort Smith. And I've already read a couple of these stories, but I didn't read, I haven't read all of them. But they're just stories about African American women. Their stories were not, you know, told widely spread, but they're just some fun events. Some are really funny and fun, and just about these brave and like no nonsense women. And they're funny stories in the West. So I'll probably read some more of that. And then finally, this was a real stretch, but this is called A Republic in Time by Thomas M. Allen. And I picked this up a while back, I don't even remember where, but it's all about time and how Americans' concept of time and the way we tell time and the way like time affects our lives, how it changed during the 19th century. I thought that would be interesting as a stretch, like I said, because this challenge is all about reading, you know, about a time when there was big change within America. And this is one of the things that would be kind of like a side quest as far as a pioneer life goes. Just this difference in the way technology and just society caused the way we look at time to change. So here's an example, because that's kind of hard to explain, but here's an example. Like, it used to be that before, before electricity was readily available in homes, that people would get up when the sun came up and then they'd go to bed when the sun went down, right? Because maybe they'd let their candle go a little bit, but not very long, because they don't want to burn out all their candles, and that's wasting money and resources. And so when the sun went down, like, your house was dark and you went to sleep, and then you got back up again when it came back up, right? So depending on the time of year and where you lived, you might not get a whole lot of sleep, or you might be getting a ton. So their rhythms were based on what the sun was doing outside, right? And then, of course, now that's not the way it is at all. Our rhythms are honestly just based on what we do, what our careers are like, and each one of us is very different of when we get up and when we go to sleep, because we have blackout curtains and we have electric lights, and we can get up when we want and go to bed when we want. It doesn't really matter, because we can control the amount of light or darkness that is around us. We can control the amount of sound, and, we can control the temperature. We can control all the things that make for a good or, rough sleep. And so that is kind of the stuff that this book is addressing, just the different things that have changed for people throughout the 19th century, and how those changes in the way that we figure time and use time, how they changed society in broader ways. Does that make sense? All right, so it's something I'm really interested in. Like, I didn't know I was interested in, right, until I found this book, and I was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. Whether or not I'll get to it, I don't know, but it's been on my TBR for a little bit, so I need to find a point at which I get into this, and maybe this will be the month for that. I don't know. So that is my big pile of possibilities for this challenge. I am looking forward to it, all rants aside. I think that it's going to be really fun and probably super nostalgic for me. I actually have gone back and found a bunch of videos that I made for my ministry channel that I've since deleted, but I have some of the videos where I was taking videos of our trips out to Oregon and some of the places that we went, and the scenery and different things. And so I thought that I would kind of like dig all those out and shape them up a little bit. They're super choppy and put some of those on the end of my videos in August to show you guys what that area of Oregon looks like, where some of the pioneers did settle, and some of the old towns. I've got one where I'm showing all about this mining town up in the mountains near where I grew up, and it's got a lot of really cool old westy things. So anyway, I'll put some of that stuff on the end of my August videos for you guys to check out. Otherwise, that's about it, guys. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.